Now I get to have a little break now because to run this Q&A we have Meredith Doig, who is the President of the Rationalist Society of Australia, and she's going to moderate the panel. Now, Meredith is retiring as President of the Rationalist Society of Australia, and I think we need to thank her for her advocacy of secularism in that role over the past 13 years as we welcome her and the panellists to the stage. I'll see you at the very end.
I've got tongue. Thank you, Jane. News of my demise is premature. I am not retiring. There you go. Yet. I'm trying. I've been trying for the last 5 years to retire, but they won't let me. So, but I'll continue trying. Thank you so much. What a fantastic day, eh? And good on you for hanging around. Really, really good. Thank you so much. We don't have a lot of time, and Jane, I know the pressure of time that you've been battling with all day, but I do want to introduce two people who haven't had a chance to say something yet. Abigail Boyd from the New South Wales Upper House, and Penny Hackett, my colleague from the Dying with Dignity movement, also from New South Wales. And I'm going to start off by asking Abigail a question about the prayers in the New South Wales Parliament. Why do you think the opponents are so passionate to keep the prayer in Parliament?
That's okay. There we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Yes, so when I first joined Parliament, I had no idea that the prayer was a thing. I'd certainly never had that in any other workplace I'd ever worked in, and I found it quite absurd. So one of the first things I did was to put in a motion to scrap the prayer and to replace it with a moment of silent reflection on our responsibilities as people of New South Wales. And my God, the Conservatives really lost their shit. So it was seen as
the Seven Mountains mandate at work.
it was seen as being anti-religious, and I got called all sorts of horrible things for that. I got told I was going to hell by Fred Nile. But when it comes to the New... Yeah. When it comes to the New South Wales Parliament, we have such a huge percentage of MPs who are overtly religious, most of them Catholic or Christian or variations thereof. I think we calculated it to be well in, excess of half of all MPs in New South Wales Parliament. But the truth is that they rely on religion as a way to avoid debate, to avoid any kind of real discussion based on evidence, because they can rely on that religious aspect of their personality, say they've got this conscience vote and this is why we're going to do what we do. So by suggesting that we don't do something as ridiculous as the prayer at the beginning of each workday, I was shaking the very foundations of the cover that they can use to not do half the things the public want them to do. So I think that is why.
Very good. Thank you, Abigail. I want to come back to that a bit later on, and maybe you would like to ask Abigail some further questions in a sec, but I'm just going to get Penny to say a word before I open up to questions in the audience. Penny, what does secularism mean for you?
Is this on? Yes. Well, personally for me, it means me respecting other people's beliefs and other people respecting my beliefs. I have spent 7 years fighting for voluntary assisted dying laws.
Successfully?
Well, yes, they were implemented on Tuesday, and there's been a few lessons in there for me personally, and I think for everyone here, about how secularism works in the public space. It's all wonderful that the census shows 40% of people are non-religious. How are you going to motivate those people, and what are you going to ask them to do? How do you activate them? So with assisted dying, we had consistently in surveys between 75 and 85% public support. Numerous surveys also confirming that people of faith had very high levels of support for it, very small levels of opposition. MPs, obviously those who supported it, this doesn't apply to them, but others could not have given a shit about the fact that there was such community support. And we had to fight tooth and nail to get access to them when we know that the Archbishop can ring up any Premier and get on straight away to talk about their issues. So we had to form from the ground up community grassroots organising, and to do that you need people, you need access to people, you need expertise, strategy, messaging. We ended up sort of by accident, but we had started off with 13,000 people on our database and ended up with 120,000, and we were able to activate them to write over 30,000 letters, emails to MPs. We held flash mobs outside electorate offices, and we made a lot of noise, and we had to, and if we hadn't have done that, this would never have happened. So we can't be complacent about increasing levels of people stating that they have no religion. We have to be able to do something with that, and we need to get together with allies. So I would say we are fighting the same common enemy for assisted dying, for trans rights, for reproductive rights, and we should be getting together with Equality Australia, we should be getting together with family planning, and all of those groups that are fighting exactly the same opponents. And as Chris so rightly pointed out, that is exactly what I saw in Parliament. You are not a conspiracy theorist, you are not overblowing the issue. The religiosity in Parliament it's no accident. And I also want to point out, it hasn't been mentioned, the level of religiosity in the medical profession and the fact of the enormous amount of private health care and aged care that is run by faith groups. But there are also over 20 public hospitals in Australia that are run under contract by faith organisations, which is not to also mention the delivery of a lot of community services that are contracted out, particularly palliative care, to faith organisations. And until we start focusing ourselves and getting people angry and getting their boots on the ground, we're just going to be throwing rocks.
Okay, I'm going to take Guy in the blue first because you've had your hand up the longest.
Thanks very much. I've been wanting to ask this question all day, and it sort of was brought up by Chris Schacht. There's a lot of suffering at the moment from the general public and the rising costs, and a lot of anger about tax dodging by big corporations. I tried to find out how much revenue is foregone because of the tax concessions to the church in New South Wales, and I thought a real foundation block for a campaign against the privilege of the churches would be how much money does Australia forego at a federal and state level because of the tax concessions to the religious groups, and then how much on top of that do they get in various unsupervised contracts. Are these figures available at the federal or state level? Does anyone know them, and can we publicise them?
Senator Shoebridge, in his own way earlier today, commented on that, and I know he's been asking questions in Senate estimates, and on and off people have been asking these questions. Some of us internally, a long time ago when I was a senator, asking questions in the structure of budgets. How much money has foregone by tax deductibility issues? As I understand it, and I hope Senator Shoebridge can get this in estimates. I think it's over $10 billion of tax deductibility, where someone makes a donation to, and it's to a charity, and they get that deduction back off the tax. In the end, it's the taxpayer paying it because there's less revenue. But and the thing is, the tax deductibility structure, though many of these organisations seem like very good reasons, you know, charities helping poor people, etc., that is one thing. But the way that is done, and what Senator Shoebridge said today about changes that went back, someone said about changes on over the chaplaincy thing. A lot of these charities are built up over the years where what happens, you form a charity to make donations to the women in Afghanistan, you know, a very good cause to help women in Afghanistan. It goes to the Federal Treasurer, you put a letter in, and there is a section, the charity section in the Treasury Department, make a recommendation, but ultimately the Treasurer says yes or no. What I know happens is, if the people who want the deduction, they get a range of people to write letters to the Treasurer saying they're a well-meaning group, give the donation, etc. You might actually find there are 10 different organisations all claiming to help women in Afghanistan, all have got over the years tax deductibility. So it is incredibly inefficient because the small amount of money, there might be way over 20, 30% is gone on administration and doesn't end up with the women in Afghanistan. And I understand the charity section tries to say about 20% or thereabouts should not go, more than that should not go on administration. But there have been outrageous scandals. The second thing is about churches, about the religious bodies, the big ones. I came across a case where I started investigating only a couple of years ago. You try to find, let's just pick, St Vincent de Paul, a big charity organisation. You make a donation to St Vincent de Paul, it's tax deductible. Who actually is the committee running St Vincent de Paul? You cannot find who they are and how they got appointed, other than it's probably an archbishop in the church somewhere. The same with, what's it called, the one for the Anglican Church, Anglicare. So what you find is that it is obscure and oblique in chasing it all down.
I think that's the way they like to keep it, Chris.
Of course, they absolutely love to keep it. So that is what we tell the tax deduction is, and I know the Productivity Commission has done work in this area, because the loss of revenue to all of us is substantial. Then
Chris,
the other one,
Chris,
you're
just
talking.
hang on.
Sorry.
Victor's just going to add something to it. Okay.
Very quick
Thanks.
comment. It also happens in local government. Local government legislation is state-based. In Victoria, churches don't pay rates. In my municipality, and what happens where a church has a commercial building, a bit like the sanitarium example that was being discussed. So you've got a church building, it's got commercial buildings on the side. They're not paying rates. And we've got private schools, they're not paying rates, and they're often run by the churches. The amount that's foregone in my own municipality is huge.
Can I just say the answer to your question is we don't know. And the reason why we don't know is that they don't ask. They're not required to give the information. And that's part of the problem. Now, there was a guy down here. In the meantime, can I ask, is there anybody in the audience who has had anything to do with the armed services? And if you have, you might want to ask a question of Collin. Can we go down to the front, please?
Thank you very much. My name's Nathan Zampronio, and my question relates to where the next legislative battles are likely to be. For context, I'm a teacher, and like Steph, I was sacked by a Christian school for being gay, and that turned me into a campaigner. I serve in local government. I helped manage to get prayers eliminated from my council in 2016.
Well done.
Now, we hear in earlier sessions of the risk of a warmed-over version of the Religious Freedoms Bill coming back. Meredith, maybe you could speak to that. Abigail, in the state parliament, Alex Greenwich's omnibus bill seeks to remove certain exemptions from discrimination rules, but I fear that it's being watered down before our eyes. Could you speak to where the next legislative battles are likely to be?
I'm going to send that one to Abigail.
Thank you. So as you probably know, the New South Wales Labor Party is very conservative and very religious. And unfortunately, yes, when it comes to that Greenwich bill, in the last couple of weeks, Labor has completely sort of withdrawn its intention to run the conversion practices ban bill. And they said they were doing that basically because of the lobbying from the Christian lobby. So absolutely, that one's going to be a battle, and we're going to have to really muscle in order to get them to understand that, yeah, basically there'll be consequences if they don't allow that through. But at the same time, they're also trying to desperately push through a whole bunch of religious vilification style laws and beefing those up. And we saw, even just in the last week of Parliament, we had one of the crimes in relation to religious vilification beefed up in response to the Palestine-Israel protests. So there's a bunch of really nasty things coming through, but Labor certainly cannot be trusted in New South Wales to push back against the religious lobby.
Unfortunately, I don't think Labor can be trusted in any of the states, let alone the coalition. Is there anybody in the audience who has a question for Collin Acton to do? Yes. Okay, please.
Thank you, Collin, for your very interesting account of your work. My wife and I support an RSL fund for the reduction of veteran suicides. We've done that for a number of years, and I'm just wondering, would a large group of secular chaplains be more effective in reducing the horrific rate of suicides among veterans compared to the current types of chaplains?
Well, thank you for your work in supporting that cause. That's extraordinarily worthwhile. When it comes to chaplains working with retired members, that is veterans, believe it or not, but the Anglican bishop and colleagues have weaseled their way into the woodwork of DVA, and we actually have religious chaplains working in that space. How effective are they? I really don't know. But, I didn't get around to talking about the kind of people MSWOs are. They're employed on qualifications, not on endorsement. And I think having quality social workers, human service professionals, providing support to ADF people is the way to go. Whether we call them, I'm not sure what we end up calling them. I think I wanted to call our MSWOs WASOs. I just thought that sounded pretty cool. Get the WASO to the bridge right now. But anyway, much better than the mouthful of MSWO. I mean, that would be Wellbeing Support Officer. I know people don't like the word wellbeing, but yeah, look, I think having people with qualifications, getting them in numbers to provide support for people is the key to providing a solution there, and hopefully that's what we'll end up with.
Thank you. Up the back.
Thanks for a great panel. Just quickly, Penny, you'll be aware, of course, in the ACT that the ACT government removed the Catholic Church from the management of the Calvary Hospital, and that's now a public hospital. My question is for Victor. Victor, is there a small part of you that is a little bit disappointed that the council backed down, and maybe you would have preferred to have gone to court and have a stirring victory?
Great question.
It is a great question. I would love to have a definitive court ruling on the legality of the prayer. I actually thought, I wasn't sure what my colleagues would do and whether they would back down. They were originally very, very rigid in their support for the prayer. As I say, I only had one colleague who backed me all the way from 11, and the others went so far as to take action against me, and it was pretty tense. But yes, I would like to see the matter resolved, and I think it's going to have to fall to another councillor or councillors to take forward.
We're working on it.
Yes, and we are. Thank you.
Yes, there's a lady just in front of that guy.
I think one of the dangers that we have is not just the religious, but the non-religious who are not educated on the dangers of religion. So a lot of those people that might think, oh, prayers are a bit silly, but they think, oh, what harm does it do? I personally would actually like more religious education on the Bible, not in terms of because I want to become a Christian, but because I know bits and pieces of things that are, discriminatory against, women or men for that instance, gay people, etc. But not always enough to really combat some of the religious arguments. And it's going to sound like a weird thing to say, but is there anywhere you can actually do some kind of Bible study or something, or get this information other than just kind of Googling and finding the odd comment? Because so that was my question, but also, just in for instance, one line from the Bible that I know of is the one about, women should be silent and can't teach and shouldn't have authority over men. I'm paraphrasing. Now, I think, the majority, at least half the population more so, are women. If we had T-shirts made with that kind of thing on it, I mean, how many religious women either don't know this stuff or don't really want to think about it, but that's in your face, and this is what religious, or we're paying religions who are funding that have this kind of belief system from the Bible. So my point is, I think that kind of, let's get some of the actual verses from the Bible and other religions out there on mugs, on T-shirts or whatever that are offensive to people. But also, do you know of anywhere you can actually study this stuff from a non-religious perspective?
No.
So, yes.
Penny's going to take it.
Just one other very quick thing. I just think one of the ladies mentioned Islam there. I also think that as much as I think it's fantastic, you're all devoted to secularism and talking about the extremism of some Christians, I think that if we don't also address Islam, that a lot of those people that are concerned about Islam will go to the far right or to the Christians, because a lot of the Christians are the ones that are actually combating some of the extremism of Islam. So that's it.
Thank you for your question. And before I ask Penny to give her response to it, can I just say, join a humanist group or a rationalist group or a secularist group. I mean, there is information within these groups. It takes a while to absorb it and everything, but that's the way that we all learn. When I was growing up, my colleague from ages ago, Vicky Caulfield, is here. We cut our political campaigning teeth in the women's electoral lobby, but back in the 1980s. Before that, I didn't even know there was a difference between a federal health minister and a state health minister. So you've got to join things, and when you join things, then you learn. So I really would encourage you, just join something local, okay? Oh, good on you, okay. Penny.
Yeah. Am I on? Yes. Just to respond to your instinctive suggestion that trying to change people's minds by showing them the evidence, we are dealing with people that they either don't care or they know that it's bullshit. And this comes down to Steve Bannon, political genius, flood the field with shit. And that's what they're doing. And I feel that sometimes those of us who care about evidence and facts and the progressive side, we spend a lot of time trying to justify and explain and oppose and tell people why they're wrong. That's exactly what they want. They want us disappearing off down academic rabbit holes to try and go fact check, fact check, fact check. We need clear messaging to not flood any fields with shit, but to flood the fields with things that will appeal to people who people need, as Jane always says, people need to be emotionally engaged, and they're not going to be emotionally engaged by academic papers and dueling clauses from the Bible. They need to understand what the threat is and the importance of secular policy making, secular government, secular education, secular medical care. So until we can start capturing people's emotions and getting them engaged in that way, we're playing right into the hands of the opposition by repeating their stories and trying to rebut it. That's exactly what they want.
Thank you. Guy up there. Can we move on to the next question, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm a sub-lieutenant in the Royal Australian Navy. I'm also the co-founder of the Ex-Muslim Support Network of Australia. So having come from a vulnerable background of being deeply religious and then leaving it and leaving the community that I had depended on, I'm very grateful to you, sir, for having worked on establishing the kind of environment that people like me can find structure and community and meaningful work within. I know I'm not the only member of the group that has joined the Defence Force in recent years. So thank you, sir. I suppose my question as well is related to chaplaincy in general. Obviously, we've had many people here talking about chaplaincy at schools and in the Defence Force as well. Is there a concerted effort to making this, a secular, streamlining this process? Because it seems like something that's happening all across these different departments and different organisations right now.
Gee, I wish there was some way of actually connecting up all those dots and streamlining the process. And look, we tried to do something similar. Joe Sahi's, Social Health Australia, we tried to develop a training package and a way of accrediting chaplains. And for Joe and his organisation, who does social prescription, making sure that practitioners that, so you go to a GP, you're lonely, they prescribe a friend, someone that you can go and talk to. But actually having a group of people, volunteers, all the way through to people who could be chaplains in Defence Force, or could be pastoral carers in Defence Force, could be trained and qualified, I hate to use the word endorsement, but that's how Defence think, having some endorsement to be able to do the job. But I guess it gets back to that point I made just previously. I think it really should be based on qualification. I think there needs to be a revolution in ADF chaplaincy. It needs to go on qualification. I don't think a theological degree cuts it. I don't think pastoral care experience in a Christian church cuts it. I think we actually need to have real qualifications around base level counselling. Now, when I brought this up, I was stepping into landmines left, right and centre with army psychology, unbelievable, social workers, unbelievable. I'm stepping into their lane, now I'm stepping into this lane. It was quite confusing for a period of time there, but if we could all agree with a scope of practice on what this looks like, and then when it's more tricky, it's referred on to psychology or onto a social worker. But whatever it is, I think there's real grounds for change. Look, I'm sort of confident we're going to achieve some ends here. I've had a chat with, I think, some fairly significant people over the pond in Parliament House, and I think there's some thinking along the same lines. Whether or not we achieve anything out of those conversations, I don't know. But I would like to think that we can start to see some change, and really grateful. I guess you've been through the mill down at Cerberus. Oh, at Creswell. So, okay, yeah, Creswell. So that's, I'm sorry about that, mate. But, been through the mill there, so you're still current serving? I'll catch up with you after.
We have to wind up. Yep. Okay. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we have to wind up, but I just want to say one thing to leave in your minds. Our enemy is not religious people, or at least it's not most religious people. Most religious people do not agree with their clerical leaders. Our enemy is 12% of religious people in Australia. They are the tribal ones who realise, or not realise, they are convinced that their job is to proselytise. I don't care what people believe in the privacy of their own minds. That's entirely up to them. I do care when they try to impose that on other people. That's the enemy. Just be careful. It's not the mainstream religionists. They are generally supportive of voluntary assisted dying. They're supportive of equal marriage. They're supportive of access to safe, legal abortion services. Be careful. Don't wipe everybody with the same black brush. It's the 12% tail that is wagging the dog here. And those are the people that we have to focus on. And the mainstream, as Penny just mentioned, the mainstream, we need to make them our allies because they don't agree with the 12% tail either. Okay, we do have to wrap up, and I'm going to hand back to Jane to wrap up the conference as a whole. Thank you, Jane.
Well, thank you very much for a fabulous panel. Can we thank everyone on the stage? Abigail, Chris, Meredith, Penny, Collin and Victor. We have come to the end only half an hour over time. My apologies. It's my responsibility to bring it on time and I failed at that very basic job, so I am extremely sorry for that. But when you look at the quality of the content, the interesting topic, the lack of opportunity we have to gather and to speak about things in this honest and open way, I think you can forgive us that extra half an hour. I do need to say a couple of things, not least of all to thank Jack Galvin Wright for organising this conference, getting it all happening, the Teachers Federation for the venue, the sponsors for making sure that this could be done properly. I do really strongly believe that this should be the first of many. I love Chris Schott's ideas about organising, getting one in every state, and really ramping up the reaction to the horrifying and terrifying things that Chris Stevenson was talking to us about earlier today, about literally world domination, a sort of world theocracy. I wish them luck with that because the problem is they're not just fighting us, who, yes, we may be like a lot of drunken kittens on a Saturday night, if only we're lucky enough to find any alcohol, but they will have to fight other theocrats of other religions. That's going to be a very formidable obstacle for them. But we don't want to get caught in the crossfire either. So that is something else to think about. But I've thoroughly enjoyed being your MC. I know that Steph Lentz, who stepped in the last minute, her book is available in the foyer. There are other books available if you would like to buy them. I think this is just the beginning of the conversation, the beginning of people getting organised, the beginning of prayers going out of council meetings, out of parliaments, of chaplains. Let's just ditch the name chaplain and call them counsellors, social workers, youth workers, whatever you want to call them, not wellbeing officers. Not, please. That's, huh? Councillor Troy. Okay, well, look, I'm open to a lot. Not necessarily that, but nevertheless. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to every speaker today. And what an extraordinary conversation and how necessary it is. I'll leave you with a quote from, I have completely forgotten his name, which is really annoying of me, but he wrote a wonderful book called The Activist's Handbook, and he said that activism is like the immune system. It rises in response to the threat. And maybe that's what we've been doing today. Thank you all.